Let us talk about Nigeria and her oil. Nigeria is Africa's top oil producer, and oil is the government's biggest source of revenue. But the economy has been struggling, and poverty levels are on the rise. Poverty of those living around the source of Nigeria's wealth is bare to see. So, why can't Nigerians depend on their country's oil wealth? What happens to all that money? Bad policies? Theft? Or subsidy? They call Nigeria the African giant for a reason. It is home to Africa's biggest population and largest economy, powered by a growing services industry and agricultural exports like cocoa and palm oil. It has Nollywood, Africa's biggest film industry, fashion houses, a booming entertainment industry, and a very wealthy elite, including the richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote. Nigeria also has a lot of natural resources, minerals, gold, and oil. Lots of oil. Nigeria has the second largest reserve on the African continent and is the 12th largest producer worldwide. And yet, many Nigerians have it hard. World Poverty Clock says 91.8 million Nigerians live in extreme poverty. That is more than 47% of the entire population. Compare that to 24% in Ethiopia and 16% in Kenya. And they don't even have oil. Despite Nigeria's vast oil wealth, half of its population lives on less than $2 a day. Now, you'd think that a resource-filled country like Nigeria will rely on some of that oil wealth. The thing is, the Nigerian government does. But that's part of the problem. The Nigerian government depends on oil for as much as 75% of its revenue. So when the global oil prices crashed in 2014, Nigeria went into a recession and is still struggling to get out.
The time will come when crude oil will run out, or nobody wants to buy it at the price we are selling, as we've just witnessed in the last few months. And then what happens? We will still need these petroleum products, but at that time, we will not have the petrodollars to fund any subsidy. So we will have no choice, and the situation may be worse then, because we would not have made the investments we needed to have made at this time when we have the money to do it.
The society is going to be better off if the money the government is spending on subsidy, they use it to build roads, they use it to equip hospitals, they use it to build schools. People in my hometown, they don't go to the type of primary school that I went. We spend too much money governing Nigeria than building Nigeria. And petroleum subsidy is one of it.
This sector, the government have lost a lot of revenue over the years as a result of the current sector in which the sector is operating.
Even when oil prices are good, Nigerian experts say not a huge slice of that revenue gets to the people. So where does that oil money go?
The future. Petroleum money cannot be spent for what is consumed today and not taking care of what is going to build tomorrow.
Nigerian crude is found right here under the waterways of the Niger Delta. A few Nigerian companies operate within the region. However, the heavy lifters are the international companies present in the region. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, contracts suppliers under the DSDP Direct Sale, Direct Purchase Program to take out Nigeria's crude and swap for refined petroleum products. That is, our crude is taken out and refined petrol is brought in return. A combination of foreign and local suppliers are used to transact this agreement.
There's a perception that marketers always want to profiteer. There's a perception that marketers just want to take advantage of every Nigerian out there. But that's not the case. We're unable to access the foreign exchange that is required for us to import the products. And that's part of the things that I said you may find that would get improved, hopefully, if there's a deregulated market. But today we're constrained. We're constrained because we're not able to access the foreign exchange that is needed in the CBN. We're not able to access the foreign exchange that is needed in the I&E window. However, because government is fixing the price, government is using the CBN rate to fix the price or to calculate your landed cost. Because you're importing, you're opening a letter of credit, you're paying your supplier in dollars. When that product comes into Nigeria, you then have to convert that cost into Naira. And the conversion factor that is used today is the central bank rate, which is not accessible to marketers today. We're saying, like every other industry, let us be able to access the much needed foreign exchange from the I&E window, from whatever window is available, but let that market be liquid enough for us to be able to import the products that we need to import.
The Nigerian oil industry is plagued by a number of challenges, and one of the biggest is theft. Tucked in the forest, you will find people cooking oil. There are hundreds of illegal refineries in the Niger Delta, where criminal gangs tap into pipelines. In early 2019, more than 23 million barrels of oil were stolen and sold in the black market. These illegal refineries contribute to huge fire outbreaks and the massive oil spills experienced in the Niger Delta region. And then you have subsidy, the most controversial component in Nigeria's oil sector, and frankly, the most dangerous element impacting development and industrialization in Nigeria.
So a system was put in place through the PSF, which ensured that whenever prices were going up, that government would refund marketers the difference between the landed cost of fuel and the price set by government through an organization called the PPPPRA. Under that scheme, marketers were supposed to get a refund on their payments within 45 days after the product was landed in the country. But over time, that became a big problem, and even as at now, there are still bills that are outstanding 4 years after the people have brought in the products, under reference that they are trying to get a refund from.
Unfortunately, the current policy environment that imposes a price on investors in the sector, irrespective of changes in parameters, has effectively blocked out private investors in the sector. That is why the sector has remained as backward as it has been.
Right now we have 4 refineries that are obviously not working, that have staff of close to like 3,000 plus, that earn salaries and have no contributions.
There's a lot of investment that is required in the whole value chain of this downstream industry. I talked about transportation of the refined products. I talked about running petrol stations. All these, there are investments made at all these various levels. More so on refining. Ideally, we should have many more refineries that are working in Nigeria so we wouldn't have to import. But again, when you fix the prices, just like I've explained earlier, you cannot adjust those fixed prices to reflect the expenses along the whole value chain. So therefore, somebody who invests in new pipelines, for instance, or in new refineries, is not going to be able to recover his costs because the price is fixed. However, if the prices were allowed to be determined by market forces, then whoever is invested will be attracted to bring in his investment. And the more you make it difficult by fixing the price, the less likely that you'll find people bringing in that kind of investment that we need, whether it's in refining, whether it's in pipelines, whether it's in delivery trucks, whether it's in petrol stations. All these things, the people who invest in them need to make a decent return on their investment.
In response to these issues, the government in August 2000 set up a 34-member special committee on the Review Petroleum Product Supply and Distribution. Their task was simple: solve problems faced by the downstream petroleum sector. The committee returned with their verdict, which included: 1. Stakeholders were not happy with price structure and low returns. 2. Facilities and pipelines were in bad shape. 3. Restructure the NNPC. 4. Deregulate the importation of petroleum products. 5. Set up a petroleum products pricing regulatory agency, whose primary motive was to deregulate and liberate the downstream sector, removing subsidy permanently.
Refinery is the end target of crude petroleum, and it doesn't matter whether it's offshore, which is going abroad, or refining it locally. Now, if we understand that, then people will come to realize that there's a massive investment to be able to transform crude oil to refined products, which is your PMS, your AGO, and so on and so forth. When you don't have that investment, which is in refineries, product must be brought from abroad. And if the product is going to be brought from abroad, there's a landing cost. And that landing cost is more or less the wholesale price plus margin to whoever is going to market the product that's brought from abroad. And if the government or the institutions that be will not allow the market clearing price of that imported product to occur, then somebody has to pay for the difference. And that's how subsidy came into existence.
In 1996, Nigeria experienced the worst fuel scarcity in the country. Citizens queued for an average of 2 to 5 days to buy fuel. Cost of transportation tripled, cost of foodstuff increased, and people walked for miles on end because they could not afford inflated transport fares. Those that could waited long hours to catch the scanty public transport available. To mitigate against fuel queues in the country, statistics show that an average of 55 to 60 million litres of petrol is loaded out of depots daily. Industry experts postulate that Nigerians consume a daily average of 30 to 35 million litres. The residual quantity goes out the borders of the country, subsidizing other countries.
Because our pricing mechanism is not consistent with global pricings, what you find is that the average price of refined petrol, PMS, in West Africa is anything between 280 to 320 naira per litre, while in Nigeria we're selling at 145 naira. That is a recipe for smugglers, what we call a smuggler's paradise.
So who are those really benefiting from subsidy? Is it the commercial or private vehicle owners? The owners of generators? The neighboring countries that the products are moved to? or Nigeria as a whole? Are the effects of the subsidy equally beneficial to everyone? In the last 8 to 9 years, Nigeria has spent over 10 trillion naira on subsidy. In 2019 alone, almost 1 trillion naira was spent on subsidy, and in that same period, Nigeria budgeted about 600 billion naira for education and 400 billion naira for the healthcare sector. If half the funds spent on subsidy in the last 8 to 9 years were invested in the healthcare development of Nigeria, Nigeria would have built over 500 equipped health centers and paid healthcare workers better, thereby retaining them in the country. Most importantly, we would have been better prepared and equipped for the COVID-19 pandemic. Nigeria has only about 42,000 doctors to cater for a 200 million plus population. We are losing doctors to foreign countries with better working conditions and functioning equipment in their hospitals. Education is one of the sectors in Nigeria that needs the most investment. With 200 million plus Nigerians, 70% of which are young, Nigeria's future is dependent on the deliberate and proper education of its youth. Dilapidated infrastructure, ill-equipped and poorly paid educators are some of the factors inevitably hindering the progress of education in the country. If the effect of subsidy is so devastating to the Nigerian economy, why continue with it?
Unfortunately, it has become a burden on the federal government where nearly 1/4 of the annual budget is spent on subsidizing petroleum. To the extent that what government over the last 10 years subsidizing petroleum, which is even just PMS alone, is more than what the government spent on infrastructure and on health and education. And so subsidy has become more or less an elephant that is a burden on the federal government, and it's affecting nearly everything that the federal government wants to do. Government's responsibility to educate the public that the social welfare loss because of petroleum subsidy is so much. It's huge. Look at the hospitals. They're bad. No equipment. Look at roads. We don't have many tarred roads that are functional in some parts of the countries. In nearly every part. Look at education. No research labs. Not in fact, professors are paid something far below living wage, that you are spending so much money of the budget for petroleum subsidy. So the time for this to be removed is here.
The Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, PPPRA, was established in 2003 and tasked with the responsibility to attain a strong, vibrant downstream subsector of the petroleum industry, where refining, supply, and distribution of petroleum products are self-financing and self-sustaining. With the law establishing the PPPRA, the road to full deregulation and liberalization of the downstream sector became open for all the stakeholders in the sector to play their part according to the rules and guidelines as will be unfolded by PPPRA based on its functions. 17 years later. 1. On a positive note, AGO and DPK have been deregulated. However, 2. Infrastructure is substandard and in some cases, inexistent. Refineries are not working. Pipelines are damaged. Trucks are old and dilapidated, causing high accident rates. Many stations and depots have closed down. 3. Industry stakeholders continue to complain about making losses. This is reflected in the performance of those quoted in the Nigerian Stock Exchange, etc. Yet, NNPC subsidized fuel up to almost 1 trillion naira last year through its under-recovery program. This is hardly self-sustaining.
With respect to the effectiveness of PPPRA, let me tell you that you cannot be effective if you don't have the capacity. And there is something in the name. The name of the organization presupposes that their main function is price regulation. But if you look at their function when this thing was formed, it is actually about managing the volatility in petroleum prices. And with respect to that, using subsidy as the only means to manage the petroleum volatility is too expensive.
For a bottle of beer, the production costs is probably 60 or 70%. The transportation cost and logistics cost is about 30%. The transportation and logistics cost is not the raw materials to factory to market, right? And market to, distributor to supermarket or outlets. And one of the major ingredients of this cost structure is the fueling of the vehicles. If you have fuel efficient structures in terms of refining, distribution, and outlets, you can reduce that cost by as much as almost from 30% of what it is today, 35%, to something like 10%. I want you to imagine if you take 20% or so off the cost of production and distribution of most of the companies in Nigeria, you're talking about a GDP of $420 billion. 10% of that is over $40 billion, right? I want you to imagine that, right, as a form of the advantage to the ordinary man. Let me start by saying what is not. That is, in other words, let's get rid of the myths. The myth that deregulation is the same thing as price increase. The myth that subsidy removal is the same thing as punishing the poor. The myth that competition is not healthy for an economy. Those things are wrong, plain wrong. The truth is that investors will not come into any market as long as prices are controlled. Because your costs, they have no control over their costs. The only thing they have a control over are their prices. The worst form of monopolies are government-owned monopolies. What you have today is a government-owned monopoly. NNPC is importing all of the stuff, and then people are playing around the fringes. We need to break that.
People confuse subsidy removal with regulation, so it's fair. Now, subsidy removal is saying we're not subsidizing anymore. Now, you can stop subsidy and not deregulate. So you might just say, well, we'll sell products at market prices. Deregulation means that you develop a system where regulation doesn't mean no regulator. So that's another confusing thing. Regulation means that you allow the market to operate along efficiencies. You allow supply, demand, prices to be determined. At the same time, you put in a process where you certify and you protect consumers, not by price fixing, not by supply fixing, not by dollar limiting, but by ensuring that the range of values are determined. It also means that some of the extant laws need to be changed.
I would say that people should applaud the fact that finally there's deregulation. With a deregulated market, you don't have any of the abuses that we saw. I'm in the industry. And I keep saying to people, the kind of abuses we saw with the subsidy scam, it made all of us sit back and ask ourselves, what exactly is going on? Money was wasted. But in a deregulated market, there's no chance for all of this. People will bring in products, they will sell at whatever price they sell at. The con man out there, whether he's somebody who is in whatever class, can afford to make his own choices. He can choose, because once the market is deregulated, the consumer becomes the person who determines who he wants to buy his product from. Ultimately, in a deregulated market, the consumer is king.
Most investors would like to invest in the downstream, but they won't because the clarity and the guidelines are not clear. As we speak today, the economy is in a crisis. We don't have enough dollars, and the naira is being yo-yo. If we'd save the money we'd spent on importing our subsidies, we probably have a reserve of close to $3.6 billion today. With that kind of reserves, the naira will be better defended, and the dollar will be better, and the naira exchange rate will be much stronger.
There are over 5,000 kilometers of pipelines in Nigeria which were built by NNPC maybe more than 25 years ago. Many of those pipelines today they are not usable. They are full of holes, and if you pump product through them, if you pump 1,000 liters through them, if you are lucky, you will get 100 liters at the other end. This is all huge wastage to Nigeria. But again, these are investments that people would have gladly made if they were in a situation where they know that they could recover their investment. The issue really is that without them recovering their cost and making some reasonable profit on their investment, the investment that we need to raise the standards and even make deliveries more efficient and cheaper will not be made.
The truth is that Nigeria's growth strategy, because we have a population that is growing at a rate faster than our growth rate, our growth strategy to actually surpass and outperform our population growth rate is going to be what we call an investment-led strategy. An investment-led strategy means that investors, both domestic and international, will invest in our business and get a return, and by so doing, create jobs and even out and actually make the economy much more attractive for everybody. There is a sequence. You deregulate prices, you liberalize the industry, and you enhance competition. So let's take it again. Deregulation, liberalization, and competition. And then who benefits at the end? The consumer. Cameroon has just announced that they intend to import something like almost 605,000 liters over a period. What does this mean? It means that the West African region, that's Cameroon alone, the West African region is a big market. So if we have investments in Nigeria, and Nigeria becomes a hub for refining products, you'll find that with our pipeline network, we'll be able to satisfy the whole of West Africa, not only from a production basis, refine transportation logistics, and it'll be cheaper than them importing refined products all the way from Rotterdam. The efficiencies, the macro efficiencies that will be thrown up because of these investments and the seamless nature of the production cycle and the value chain means that other sectors are going to benefit substantially from this investment. So we call that the unbalanced growth theory, and where you have linkages. Petroleum refining, fertilizer drives agriculture, where you have petrochemicals, you have aviation, you have cooking gas, LPG, you have LNG, you have so many other sectors that are linked to this, and therefore we think that Nigeria's potential GDP growth today is something like almost 4.2, while Nigeria is going at about almost 2%. And now, because of the pandemic, it's going to go negative. So the economic contraction is going to be about 6%. The recovery process has started a slow U-shaped recovery. However, it's going to coincide with the commissioning of all of this investment, including rail transportation, including robust road network. We are going to have an aviation link, and we're going to have a boom in the services sector, including Nollywood and the telecoms. So generally speaking, I think that for Nigeria and most other countries, we are going to see a much more efficient world, much more productive world, and definitely and certainly a much more prosperous world. The advantage to the ordinary man. So let us take a simple example. The price of flour today is 12,700 for a bag of flour, which you use to bake bread. The landed cost of wheat in Nigeria is 1. 2, the milling of the wheat. 3, the transportation of the wheat from mill gate to the warehouse, then the warehouse to the baker and the bakery. So we can take out at least 1,000 naira, if not 1,500 naira, by having a much more efficient structure. Even putting the flour on trains of the president is commissioning hopefully the Warri, Takwe, Abuja rail. The same thing is going to happen to the Lagos-Ibadan rail. Putting those things there rather than going through checkpoints and all of these things could reduce significantly the cost. So the ordinary man will benefit. 1, cost of raw materials coming to the factory, cost of products going to the market, and so on and so forth. Don't forget that agricultural products, we have a perishable rate of almost 30 to 40%. That is, all the plantains we produce, at least 40% of them is lost because of poor storage and things like that. But if we can get products to the market quickly and evacuate them quickly because of the efficiencies and the cost structure, you'll find that all of those become benefits for the ordinary man. So I think that 1, prices will be stable. I'm not saying that they will come down. They will not spike. Jobs will be created, right? And then the velocity of circulation of money and actually what I call the difference between the rich and the poor could theoretically actually begin to reduce. Because yes, the rich will get richer, the poor will get richer, and who knows, we need a brighter tomorrow.
Deregulation cannot be achieved without the political will and the deliberate cooperation from the government, industry players, and the Nigerian citizens. Deregulation will improve Nigeria's productivity by generating savings which the government can invest in the healthcare sector to increase the health and vitality of the citizens, causing us to be more productive. The education sector to prepare and empower the youth to play a productive role in the society. The agriculture sector to provide food and sustenance for the population and to move from subsistence farming to exporting excess food, which will provide income, increase GDP and productivity as a country. The infrastructure sector to improving rail and road network, thereby increasing productivity in distribution of food and services.
This business means getting things done with ease, getting petroleum products delivered with ease, following the processes that can reduce burdens, that can cause problems. And with this, I believe the government should be encouraged in respect of this. So the ease of business is to provide an environment that is friendly, like what government is trying to do now. The tracks are being rehabilitated out of Apapa ports. That means products can be moved from Lagos to Ibadan now by the time it starts running. Then that means the pressure will be off this the Ikorodu Road, that Mobala Bankantoni, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway under major construction and the expansion.
The telecommunications sector to improve the efficiency and productivity in communications. Partnering with the industry and private sector to 1. Create business opportunities. 2. Create quality jobs. 3. Export refined products. 4. Increase foreign exchange earnings by encouraging investments in the installation and efficient operation of refineries, petrochemical plants, energy plants in order to increase distribution efficiency and energy productivity. Ultimately, improving the standard of living and productivity of individuals, business units, and the government.
I have just one line. Once you are audacious and bold enough and you ask yourself, yes, you can, every other thing becomes academic. So, for the government, yes, we can. For the consumer, yes, we can. For the investor, yes, we can.
It may take some time to all materialize because there's a process, it will take some time. But if we don't start that journey, we're only postponing the evil day. Ultimately, I think it's in the best interest of the country, it's in the best interest of the economy, it's in the best interest of our industry in particular, and finally, it's the best interest of the Nigerian people.